When a soldier is transitioning out of the Army into the civilian life, they're trying to find, a job that they can, get that's going to translate well. Maybe because of the skills they learned in the Army. Maybe they're even looking for like direct translation, right? They did this job in the Army, so they want to do that exact same job on the civilian side. And sometimes that can be helpful. But let's say regardless of your MOS, what skills could possibly help you to transition into the civilian side that employers are going to like, right? You put it on a resume and they're going to be like, okay, that's a pretty cool skill. I like that. I want to hire this person. Well, I've got some skills, I got 5 in fact, that I definitely think that do help you if you word it correctly and you really make it known of those skills on your resume. The first one is probably the first one on the list because it's probably the most important one out of all these actually, and that is leadership, right? If you have some leadership experience, especially if you are a non-commissioned officer or even an officer in the Army, you can use that leadership skills to help transition that into the civilian workforce, right? Because you have that leadership experience, they're gonna be like, okay, this person has experience, being in charge, to a certain degree, having to, kind of have other people under them and having to manage those individuals. So especially like for jobs that maybe you're trying to get, not an entry level job into a different career, maybe you're trying to get like a manager position, some kind of supervisor type of position, then that can help out. And even if you're not trying to get like a supervisor type of position, then they at least see that, okay, this person does have that experience. They may have to start off down here, but knowing that they already have that leadership experience, if they do really well at that job, and now they understand that job, we can easily transition that person into a supervisor position because they know how to manage individuals. Some of the other stuff that might come along with that is that if you're a non-commissioned officer, you've probably done counseling statements, right? Counseling statements are a thing that you have to do at least monthly, right? There's negative counselings and there's monthly counselings and all that kind of stuff. But let's say at the bare minimum, right, there's these monthly counselings that non-commissioned officers, NCOs are supposed to be doing on their lower enlisted soldiers. They're supposed to be giving the monthly counselings to tell them, where they're doing great at and where they can improve and how they can improve. And these can easily be translated over into the civilian side as like performance evaluations, because a lot of employers may want supervisors to be able to do like performance evaluations, to be able to really outline, okay, this is what you're doing good at, this is what you can improve at. Maybe they use that to decide if this person needs to get a raise, get a bonus, or whatever, right? But you having that experience of how to do that professional writing to write those counselings can easily transition over to saying that, hey, I could probably easily be able to do some performance evaluations on employees. If you can word it right inside of your resume, you can easily like talk about how you're responsible for X amount of dollars of equipment, right? If you're a non-commissioned officer and you had, vehicles that you're responsible for, all sorts of stuff, you can easily, fluff the hell out of that sometimes and put in there, I was responsible for millions of dollars of equipment. But even at the lower level, right? Maybe you weren't in charge of a bunch of vehicles or whatever, you have your own personal gear and you're not just putting on your resume, I was responsible for some gear that I didn't lose. You can word it in a creative way. Maybe even use AI, with current day technology to help you kind of creatively write that bullet for your resume, but putting on there that you're responsible for, even with like your TA-50, right? Your helmet, your vest and all that stuff like that. Easily probably $10,000, $20,000 worth of gear. And you can probably put a value on that and say, responsible for over $20,000 worth of equipment without loss or damage, right? You can kind of find different ways to fine tune that and kind of word it, but putting in there that you can show responsibility, right? That you've been responsible for expensive equipment, maybe really, technical equipment, especially like in certain MOSs where you have to work with rockets or radios or other tracking systems or all sorts of stuff like that. You find creative ways to kind of word that stuff where you're accountable for that stuff, to maintain that stuff and everything, to show that you're responsible with equipment, especially if you're trying to get into a job that may have some kind of, a little bit of translation where you have to deal with sensitive equipment type of thing, and having that in your resume saying, hey, I've got experience working with sensitive equipment, working with expensive equipment, keeping track of that stuff and making sure that it's well maintained. I got that experience. And if you word it correctly on the resume, maybe they look at that and be like, okay, this person already has a little bit of experience with dealing with expensive stuff, with handling, an inventory or whatever the case is, right? How you word it really definitely does matter in this. Teamwork. can be another really big one with your resume, right? If you've worked at that squad level, working at the platoon, right? Depending on your role throughout your Army career, you can easily put a lot of experience in there for teamwork, how to work as a team, right? Maybe even somehow wording it in there, how you've overcome challenges and different things, and you found ways as a team to be able to solve those problems. Because in a lot of environments, that's what they really want. They want a team member, right? They want someone who's going to easily integrate with their team, their employees and everything like that, to work together in a collaborative environment in certain cases too. And they want people that already have experience with that. That's very helpful. So you making sure to word it properly, like, some of the experiences you had with working with your platoon, working with that squad or whatever, to really show your skills that you've had X amount of years of experience, especially like in stressful environments, right? Of working with a team and getting the mission accomplished, right? So finding ways to kind of word that in there in that resume for teamwork, I think can also be a really good one. I was kind of mentioning it earlier, but your MOS specifically, right? If you have an MOS that you're trying to directly translate into the civilian workforce, definitely need to make sure to word in there, how your job in the Army can directly translate into what they're looking for, right? If you were, let's say my MOS, right? I was an 88 Mike, I was a truck driver type of thing, transportation, right? If that was something I wanted to get into, which for me it wasn't, but if that was something that I wanted to get into, then I could definitely, put in there how my experience with convoys and transportation and hazardous materials and all that kind of stuff translate over into the workforce. And for a lot of MOSs, you can do that. There are some that maybe not, right? I've mentioned before how like 11 Bravo, not really, right? Even for like some people, they want to be a police officer, right? And they think that, I'm going to go into the Army and be a military police officer, be an MP, and then I can transition out into the police force. And I've actually heard a lot of people that have tried to do that, and they don't really prefer that. The police force would rather you kind of do something else in the military, because now they have to try to basically retrain you, because how to be a police officer in the military is not the same as being a police officer on the civilian side. So they're worried about you being kind of like stuck in those old habits, and they have to kind of like reprogram you. But nonetheless, other MOSs can sometimes directly translate over, right? You're in the IT field. Maybe you're 25 Bravo and you want to do tech stuff on the outside to be IT, probably a really great one. But whatever MOS is, if it's something that you're trying to like transition over to, and it does transition over into the civilian side, then you got to make sure to word all that experience that you've got from the military side to make sure that that employer sees that, okay, from the military aspect of it, I've got experience, or this person has experience doing these same kinds of things. So training them in our ways, because our ways may be different than the military ways, should be a little bit easier because they've kind of got a good grasp on it. And you got to make sure that, you kind of make sure to mention that stuff in there if you're trying to transition into something that directly translates from your MOS or your job in the Army. Now, one last one, the fifth one that I want to mention in here is a pretty important one too. But before we get into it, make sure you're supporting the channel. Do it the free way. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, leave me some comments or whatever. But if you want, I got some Christopher Chaos shirts. I even got some Chaos shirts or some Army themed shirts and all sorts of other things like notebooks and all sorts of things. So visit the links down in the description box down below. But nonetheless, let's get into the fifth one that I wanted to mention. The fifth one is problem solving, right? There are a lot of moments, depending on your experiences, that you possibly could kind of throw in problem solving in there, right? You went to the field and, we ran into these kind of problems and we had to, solve that problem in a hurry to get these vehicles back up and running and get the mission going, right? You don't necessarily put that stuff in the resume, but it could come up like in an interview, right? So you just kind of simply kind of feed them a little bit of breadcrumbs for that in your resume by putting in there that you're good at working under pressure and problem solving to find the solutions, or finding some really crafty ways to really word that in there to basically let them know, hey, I've worked under pressure. I've done some crap, and I can problem solve the hell out of your issues, right? Not word it that way, but you find some kind of creative way to let them know that, hey, I can problem solve, and they feel confident in you. And maybe they bring that up in the interview, and you can kind of bring up some different situations. And maybe before the interview, if you get called up for an interview, think about some of that stuff. Some of the things of how you can kind of throw in there how you problem solved an issue, maybe under pressure, maybe it was while deployed to combat, maybe it was on a field problem, maybe it was all sorts of kind of possibilities. But you want to throw those in there to let them know that I can problem solve, right? So if things don't go the way they're supposed to go in the job environment, I have experience to problem solve it and fix that and still get the job done. One of the biggest ones for me, like from the personal aspect of it, was some of my leadership experience, right? My current job is very different from what I did in the Army, right? There are some aspects that definitely translated over, especially with my non-commissioned officer experience and having to teach soldiers, right, to help lead them and everything, right? Because now I'm a trainer, right? Now I am actually transitioned to a new kind of position at my job that I've been at for a long time, but now I'm what's known as a collective trainer, and I have to help out during exercises to, be able to help people problem solve some of the things they're doing during these exercises, or I'm training them on the software, or I'm doing all sorts of other kinds of things, during these exercises primarily and stuff. And so that leadership experience is very helpful for that kind of scenario. My experience leading soldiers or even training soldiers definitely kind of helps with that kind of a thing. But a lot of those came from being a non-commissioned officer. So I definitely recommend to you soldiers out there. I know there are several of you out there that I've met before where your goal is not to ever become a non-commissioned officer. You just want to simply do 4 years, get the hell out of the Army as a specialist, living the life in the E4 Mafia, and then maybe go off to college or go to something else. But if you can get some experience as a non-commissioned officer, I'm telling you, there is a lot of things on the civilian workforce that will see that as a positive thing because you have experience being a supervisor type of position, being in a leadership type of role, and there's a lot of things you can really kind of work into your resume from those experiences that employers are going to love to see and want at their workforce. For my people that are veterans, right? Veterans that have already transitioned out of the Army, in the comment section down below, what were some things that maybe you put on your resume when you were getting a job after you got out of the Army that translated from your military experience over into the civilian side that maybe you feel was really helpful for you to get a job? I want to hear about that down in the comment section down below. And then if you have questions, right? You're somebody who's currently in the Army, going to be getting out in a year or 2 years, maybe a couple of months or whatever, or maybe you're someone that, is still kind of starting your journey and hasn't even joined the military yet, haven't even joined the Army yet. What are your questions maybe about some of the topics here, or even off topic? That's even fine too, right? Drop those down in the comment section down below. But nonetheless, definitely leave me a comment because the YouTube algorithm may help me out a little bit more and boost the video a little bit better if you just say hi, say what's up, tell me what is your favorite band, artist, song, I don't know, favorite movie. Let me know down in the comment section down below. But hey, I appreciate you for hanging out and watching this video. If you made it this far, you must be an awesome person, and you should definitely hit that thumbs up and leaving some comments and making sure you're subscribed and all that fun stuff. You want to do some extra stuff, merch, Chaos Elite, all sorts of things. But nonetheless, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching this video. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.